2001, Los Angeles, California. A family, a home, a landlord with a very dark secret. They paid every bill on time, never caused trouble, never missed a single payment. It didn't matter. The landlord wanted them gone, and he was willing to do anything to make that happen. Fake eviction papers, racial slurs, utility cutoffs, midnight threats, 11 other families, same story. But this family refused to leave, and what they uncovered changed everything. This is their story.
This is our chance.
Their names were David and Michelle Johnson, a family of 4 living in a modest rental home in Los Angeles, California. David worked as a delivery driver during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week. Michelle worked as a home care aide, helping elderly clients in their homes 5 days a week. 2 hardworking people, 2 young kids, 1 simple goal: stability, safety, a home their children could grow up in. They had been renting from Gerald for 3 years by the time everything fell apart. 3 years of on-time payments, not one missed, not one late. They maintained the property carefully, reported issues promptly, caused no trouble. By every measure, they were the tenants every landlord claims to want. Gerald did not want them, not anymore. The neighborhood had been changing. Property values were rising. New developments were going up nearby. Gerald had done the math. If he could get the Johnsons out, he could rent that same property for nearly double the current rate, to a different kind of tenant. His words, not mine. He gave the Johnsons a verbal notice in August 2001, said he needed the property back for personal reasons. David asked for something in writing. Gerald smiled and said he would get it to them. He never did. Instead, something else started happening. Small things at first. A maintenance request ignored for 3 weeks. A water heater that mysteriously stopped working. A letter claiming the family had violated lease terms that didn't exist in their actual lease. David called Gerald about each one. Gerald was dismissive, delayed, difficult. Then the notices started appearing on the door. Official-looking documents, stamped, formatted like legal eviction papers, claiming the family owed back rent they had already paid. David had every receipt, every bank transfer, every record. The documents were false, but they were frightening, especially to a family with 2 young children who had nowhere else to go. Gerald escalated quickly after that. He began showing up at the property unannounced, walking through the home without notice or permission. California law requires 24 hours notice before a landlord can enter a rental property. Gerald ignored that completely. He showed up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday while the children were eating breakfast. He showed up at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday claiming he needed to check the pipes. He stood in their living room and looked around slowly, making comments, making the family feel like strangers in their own home. Then the utilities started going out. The water was cut off on a Wednesday afternoon without any warning. David called the utility company. They said the account had been canceled by the property owner. Gerald had called and canceled it himself. A family of 4, with no water, 2 children. School the next morning. David restored the water within 24 hours through emergency services. But the message had been sent. Gerald wanted them scared, uncomfortable, gone. What he didn't count on was David Johnson. David was not a confrontational man. He was patient, measured, careful. But he was not a man who would be pushed out of his home without a fight. He began documenting everything, every notice, every unannounced visit, every utility cutoff. He bought a small recording device and started capturing Gerald's visits on audio. What those recordings captured was shocking even to the investigators who later heard them. Gerald making explicitly racial comments about the neighborhood changing. Gerald referring to the Johnson family in deeply offensive terms. Gerald stating clearly, on recording, that he wanted, quote, these people out of his property. David had everything he needed. He contacted a housing rights organization in downtown Los Angeles. A lawyer named Patricia took the case within days. She had seen cases like this before, but when she listened to those recordings, even she was shocked by the explicitness of it. Patricia filed an emergency complaint with the California Housing Authority. Investigators arrived at Gerald's office within a week. What they found went far beyond the Johnson family. Gerald owned 14 rental properties across Los Angeles. Investigators began pulling complaint histories on every single one. The pattern was immediate and unmistakable. Property after property, the same story. Minority families, harassment, illegal entries, fabricated notices, utility cutoffs. 11 other families came forward once the investigation became known. 11 families who had been pushed out, frightened out, worn down and forced to leave. Most of them had not known their rights. Most of them had not known who to call. Most of them had simply left because staying felt too dangerous. Gerald had been doing this for years. Systematically, deliberately, across an entire portfolio of properties. He had never faced a single consequence. Until now. Gerald was served with formal charges in early 2002. Illegal eviction, housing discrimination, harassment, civil rights violations. He hired an expensive lawyer immediately. He denied everything, said the recordings were taken out of context, said the families had violated their leases, said he was simply managing his properties within his legal rights. The recordings said otherwise. The 11 additional complaints said otherwise. The paper trail of fabricated documents said otherwise. The trial lasted 6 weeks. David and Michelle testified, calmly, clearly, with receipts for every payment they had ever made. 6 of the 11 other families testified as well, each one telling a version of the same story. The same tactics, the same language, the same calculated harassment. Gerald sat at the defense table and said nothing that helped him. In 2003, he was convicted on all counts, fined $380,000. His landlord license was permanently revoked. He was banned from owning or managing rental properties in California indefinitely. The Johnson family received a settlement. The 11 other families received compensation through a class action civil suit filed shortly after. Gerald lost everything he had built on the backs of families he had tried to destroy. David Johnson stood outside the courthouse after the verdict. His 2 children stood beside him. Michelle held his hand. He said one thing to the reporters gathered outside. "We just wanted to stay in our home. That's all we ever wanted." Housing discrimination is illegal in the United States. It has been illegal since the Fair Housing Act of 1968, and yet it happens every single day, in cities and towns across America, to families who pay their rent, follow the rules, cause no trouble, and are targeted anyway because of the color of their skin. Most cases never make it to court, because most families don't know their rights, because most families are too scared or too exhausted to fight, because the system that is supposed to protect them requires them to navigate it perfectly under enormous pressure. David Johnson navigated it perfectly, because he documented everything, because he found the right help, because he refused to leave. If you are ever facing housing harassment or discrimination, document everything, every notice, every visit, every conversation. Contact a local housing rights organization immediately. You have rights, and those rights are worth fighting for. Gerald served no prison time. That is a failure of the system. But he lost his license, his properties, his income, his reputation. And 11 families got justice they never expected to receive, because one family refused to walk away. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Dark Chapters US. Because there are many more chapters left to uncover, and none of them are easy to read.